Now, another important thing every pirate must learn is how to sail.
Don't we do that already on a larger ship?
Yeah, but what if you don't have a larger ship? What if you have a small sailboat like this?
In what context would we have a smaller ship but not our big one?
Well, if you needed to escape the mainland quickly because you're being chased out by a rival crew, or an army after looting a town and there's no rowboat in sight, but there is a sailboat.
Or for when we're on vacation and we want a more relaxing boat experience without the oars.
Sure, on vacation, after you rob a small town of all their treasures.
I, for one, am excited to learn about sailing on a smaller scale. There's nothing I like more than a man on a boat, going on adventures all his own. Come, Lucius. I need you to write notes for me. Oh, and make sure you have a few diagrams. I am a very visual learner.
Well, we're aboard a sailboat, so let's make sure you have the basics down. Welcome to Bad Astra.
What's a bad Astra?
All right, sailing on a small vessel. I presume this starts with the sail.
Yeah, but it's about more than lifting a sail up and down. It's all about wing-shaped sails and the keel. The sails and the keel provide lift, which helps the ship glide through the water easier.
Ah, yes, the classic Bernoulli principle. Make sure you write that down, Lucius. Get the formula in there, too.
Captain, Bernoulli's principle is a few years ahead of us since it was published in 1724. Also, I don't do numbers, only letters.
It's not that important. First, let's go over the different parts of the ship. The keel is like the backbone of the ship or boat. It's made of stiff material like metal or timber and runs along the center of the bottom of the hull from stem to stern. The sails are the pieces of fabric extended on a mast which catch the wind and propel the vessel. If you know what you're doing, you can make the keel and sails work together to propel the ship forward.
If there's one thing I don't need a lecture on, it's anatomy, ship or otherwise.
The construction of the boat is important. You want the sails shaped in a way to create low pressure on one side of the sail and high pressure on the other side. That unbalanced pressure pushes the sails and your boat away from the higher pressure.
Yes, but how does one create this pressure imbalance? Is it when the sail faces the direction of the wind?
The sail is always curved and facing toward the wind, but not directly. The sail is slanted at an angle of attack. This angle of attack breaks the sail's symmetry from the wind's perspective. This means that the air on one side of the sail has to travel further than the air on the other side, just to get past the sail and keep traveling on its merry way. Traveling a further distance in the same amount of time means that the wind on one side of the sail has to temporarily go faster than on the other side. This is important because any faster moving fluid, like air, provides less pressure than the same slow moving fluid. Give me a piece of paper.
All right, you don't need to be rude about it.
Be sure to give him a pen so that he can write down his nice diagram.
Oh, I don't need a pen.
Well, then you don't need my paper. I spent a long time binding this book up.
Huh.
When I hold the paper paper normally, the air on all sides pushes on it with the same pressure. So the force of gravity is enough to pull it downwards. But say I speed up the air on the top, say by blowing across the top of the paper.
Captain?
Shh! I'm very invested in this demonstration.
The fast-moving air above the paper suddenly provides a lot less pressure than the still air below the paper, and the still air pushes upward on the paper. This same thing works sideways for sailing, and you can choose the direction you want to go by changing your sail's direction. If you want to sail downwind, position your sail like this, to the wind. That bit's intuitive because the wind's pushing directly on your sails, pushing your boat. But if you want to sail upwind, change the position of the sail from this to this, because the air pressure increases against the upwind side of the sail the more you sail into the wind. So, you get faster wind on the upper when it's like this, and faster wind on the lower when it's like this.
So the manipulation of the sails, either perpendicular or parallel to the wind, results in shifts in the air pressure on either side of the sail to create lift in the direction you want to travel. Brilliant!
Blackbeard, a question. Is the upper for the upwind?
No. Upper sail is downwind, lower sail is upwind.
Well, that won't get confusing at all.
So, if we want to sail away quickly from our vacation of crime, then we need to sail directly in the downwind direction to maximize our speed, as the air pressure will be the lowest on the upper.
Not exactly. If you sail directly downwind, you can't go any faster than the wind. And you're also fighting water resistance, so you won't even be going as fast as the wind. You really want the wind coming abeam. A beam is from the side. Put your sail at a 45-degree angle, splitting the difference between the sideways wind and your desired direction of travel. This is best for speed, because you have a constant force on both sides of the sail.
Oh, I see. Having air pressure on both sides achieves an equilibrium that drives a constant force on the sail, rather than an uneven force favoring one side or the other, which slows down the ship.
Exactly. And it also helps the boat from getting slowed down by the water.
Which increases the overall velocity of the ship. Lucius, are you getting all this?
Yes, Captain, even pressure on both sides makes the ship speedy.
Well, don't forget all of these wonderful details Ed is expounding on.
I can only write so fast.
It's not all about the sails, though. The pressure on the keel, your ship's backbone, also helps steer the ship. You also want the keel positioned at an angle of attack, not straight in the direction of travel, and it helps the ship get pushed sideways. Think of it like an underwater sail. You want to crab the boat with faster water moving on one side to create lower water pressure, pushing the boat in that direction.
Crab the boat?
Yeah, you know how crabs move side to side to travel instead of walking straight on? That's what you want the boat to be doing. Diagonal motion.
That makes it quite easy to remember with your vivid imagery.
I mean, that's just what it's called. You can also use the lift on the keel to balance out the lift on the sails. For example, if your sails are positioned to take you northwest, but your keel is positioned to take you southwest, the north and south will cancel, and you'll end up heading straight west.
So the lift from the keel reduces the water resistance and keeps the boat from falling over?
More or less. Side slipping is the main thing you want to avoid. You want a long and narrow keel for a faster boat, since the water doesn't get caught on it like a shorter and wider one. But if you're doing this sailing on vacation in shallow waters, a long keel will cause problems.
Is the keel the only part of the ship impacting the resistance of the water and therefore the velocity of the ship?
No, the hull is also important when it comes to resistance, because it shears the water at the front. The more water gets stuck in the shearing, the more resistance.
Like a bad pair of sewing scissors that gets caught on silk frequently.
Sewing scissors? Are those different than normal scissors?
Yes, apparently you can't use sewing scissors on anything else, otherwise it'll ruin them.
Well, then what's the point if I can't cut anything else?
They are absolutely necessary for alterations.
Oh. Yeah, I guess that's a good image for what the hull does. A smoother hull means less sticky water and less turbulence.
Sticky water? Are you referring to the water molecules sticking to the ship that must be broken in order to sail forward? I believe it's formally known as the Van der Waals force that...
Captain, you're a bit ahead again. Water molecules and the Van der Waals principle were both 20th century things.
Oh dear. Am I 2 centuries ahead this time?
Yeah. If I were you, I would stick to the year of our Lord 1717.
I don't know what either of you are talking about. Essentially, you can't do much about sticky water other than make your surface area smaller. That's why you have to clean off all the barnacles and seaweed and other junk that builds up on the side of the hull.
This is deranged! I don't clean things!
A smoother hull has less surface area for the water to stick on and is less turbulent. Same with the sails. Shearing gets all sorts of messed up when you're going at a fast clip.
The formula for this is R equals LV over mu over rho.
What's a mu and a rho?
They represent numbers. Here, I'll write them down for you. See, one is a squiggly U, and the other is a squiggly P.
But they look like letters.
Well, the air turbulence formula has numbers. It's just R equals 7 times 10 to the 4th LV.
Oh, and he's down.
Lucius? Lucius? Oh dear, there's no one else literate on the ship, and my hands weren't built for manual labor. I'm sure he'll be fine. Right?
Sure. I've never seen someone faint from numbers, but hopefully he'll wake up in a bit.
Lucius? Lucius, are you alive? Lucius? I'll just use the journal myself then, and write it down. Please, continue. I'll ensure Lucius is caught up with my exceptional notes.
All right. One of the other things to look out for is the vortices. These happen at the keel and the sails because of the water and air pressure difference. The air and the water wants to get from the high pressure to the low pressure areas to balance everything out. But since it's coming at different angles off the keel and the sail, it creates a vortex from the twisting. The vortex causes more resistance.
What about the wake coming off the ship? You know, the little path it makes in the water off the sides.
That is the bow wave. They're the same speed as the boat, so you can figure out the hull speed based on how long the bow wave is. You get a lot of crests when you're starting to move that become longer and less frequent as you pick up speed. You've got a crest at the hull and the stern, and a trough in the middle.
So the wavelength of the bow wave, measured from crest to trough, is determined by the boat's speed? If we wanted to chase down a vessel for a second climb vacation, we could use the water wave speed and wavelength to determine their speed. We've got the Laplace equation then, with v equals 1.34 root lambda, with velocity in knots and wavelength in feet, which is simplified from Rayleigh's equation, v equals root g lambda over 2 pi, where g is the force of gravity.
Wrong century again.
This would be a lot easier if Lucius didn't faint from the sound of math.
Yeah, the power of math. It's a curious thing that I understand completely with the numbers and the not letters.
Well, the math is incredibly important when figuring out how far away an enemy ship is. When you can calculate their speed, you better know when they're in range of the cannons, so you can blow them out of the water.
That would actually be very useful. Would you, teach me the number stuff? If you have time.
I would be honored, Ed. We'll add it to our curriculum. Though, We can space it out so we don't have to spend every waking moment together.
I don't mind. The faster I learn all this, the better I'll be with the fancy folks. We can fit it in between sparring and figuring out all those forks.
Get a room, you two.
If a sailboat has a waterline length of 20 feet or 6 meters, that means the speed is 6 knots according to the Laplace equation.
Astra out.
Is that another sailing term? I don't think I'll ever get tired of being at sea, adventuring to new places, looking out over the water.
The water all looks the same after a while.
You just say that because you're Blackbeard. You've explored all the 7 seas and conquered every foe. The only place you haven't explored is the stars and sky.
Huh. Flying through the stars might be a fun change of pace. Like Carl. He seems happy.
Do you think we could ever do that? Fly like birds?
Well, I don't see why not. We can use the same principle that the sails use.
The Bernoulli effect?
Yeah, we could have giant sky ships with wings like birds. The tops of the wings would be curved, and the bottoms would be flat. This would force the air to move quicker on top of the wing than below when the sky ship is flying through the air. Yeah, the quicker air on top would put less pressure on the wing, so the bottom of the wing receives more upward pressure than the top receives downward pressure, and that would lift the sky ship into the air.
That sounds splendid.
Yeah, the thing is, you'd have to be going really fast and have really sturdy wings, or really thick air.
How fast do you think it would take to actually lift off, assuming we're flying in clear air instead of a dense fog?
I don't know. Can't you figure it out with all your fancy math?
Maybe one day I will, and I will be the first gentleman sky pirate, and all our guests will be delighted with the adventures in the air.
Why are other people allowed on our sky ship?
The company might be nice sometimes. Plus, we'll need a crew to run all of the bibs and bubbles of sky pirating.
But it is our sky ship.
Of course. There's no one I'd rather co-captain with.
Huh.
What is it?
Water just looks different today.
Astra, to the stars, to the stars.